Well, good morning. It's wonderful to be back in Palm Beach County. We got a great announcement here today. I want to thank all of you for coming. Our government here in the United States and in the state of Florida is supposed to be what's called a government of laws, not a government of men. And what the Founding Fathers meant by that is it's not one individual that gets to impose a will outside the context of a constitutional system, but that the best way to preserve our freedoms is to have a society based on the rule of law. And what we've seen in our country over many, many decades is judges that have taken power away from people's elected representatives, and they have legislated from the bench. And that's not their role. Their role is to apply the law and Constitution as it's written. Well, I deal with the legislature. We have a good relationship, but you know, the legislatures don't always do great laws. Sometimes they do things that don't work out as a matter of policy. But that's not the judge's job to sit there as a council of revision and change the law. It's the people's job to elect people to change it as they see fit. And so it's really important that courts are discharging the duties that they have under the Constitution within the confines of those limitations. And I can tell you that it's critical that you do have an independent judiciary that can decide cases and controversies. And there are times when things come before a court and somebody's been aggrieved, and that court's got to render a judgment that that law at issue may violate the Constitution. And there's nothing wrong with that. And indeed, that makes the system stronger. But when you take off that judicial robe and then you act like a quasi-politician, you're not accountable the same way that an elected official is, and it really distorts the constitutional system. We really see the same thing in a different vein happening all over the country with some of these rogue prosecutors that basically say they are not going to enforce certain laws that they don't like, that they put their personal conception of, quote, social justice over what the law and their constitutional oath require. And in the state of Florida, we did a review to make sure that folks here who are charged with being the elected prosecutors were doing their job. And we had evidence that you had a fellow over in Tampa that had basically said there's certain things he's just not going to enforce. There's going to be certain policies they're going to do where people are presumptively let off the hook, even though the law requires. So we did something about that, and we made sure that we're enforcing the rule of law. When you depart from the rule of law, like we've seen with a lot of these prosecutors, like look at San Francisco. You know, the wealthy people still voted to keep that prosecutor in. Why? Because all the chaos that was unleashed by the insane policies, those were falling on the shoulders of working class communities. They were falling on the shoulders of communities that couldn't necessarily retreat behind gates and private protection. And so when you have the rule of law, the people that benefits the most are those that may not have power on their own, that may not have big institutions lined up behind them. And so when you look at judges and you look at people that are going to be on these courts, it's very important that they're able to discern rule of law from legislative will. And when you're applying that rule of law faithfully, it makes our freedom stronger, it makes our community stronger, and it makes our state thrive. So we had